So this happened about 2 years ago at my previous job, and I still can't believe how perfectly everything fell into place. Fair warning, this is a long one, but trust me, it's worth the read. I worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Chicago. Our team was pretty tight-knit, about 12 people total, and we all had to pull our weight because client deadlines were brutal and the workload was intense. That's where Sarah comes in. Sarah had been with the company for about 6 months when I started, so she had seniority over me, but not by much. From day one, something felt off about her. She was constantly sick. And I don't mean the occasional cold or flu that we all get. I'm talking about mysterious, ever-changing constellation of ailments that seem to flare up at the most convenient times. It started innocuously enough. Sarah would come in looking absolutely miserable, dramatically sighing at her desk, mentioning how she barely slept because of her chronic migraines. She'd spend half the day explaining to anyone who'd listen about her symptoms, the throbbing pain, the sensitivity to light, how she could barely function but was pushing through for the team. Our manager, Janet, would inevitably send her home early with full pay. Then it was her back. Apparently, she had herniated discs from a car accident years ago, and sometimes the pain was so unbearable she could barely sit at her desk. She'd wince dramatically when she moved, make little pain noises throughout the day, and constantly adjust her chair and position. Again, Janet would send her home, and Sarah would get workers' comp paperwork filed for ergonomic accommodations. The pattern became predictable. Big client presentation coming up. Sarah's mystery illness would flare up the day before, leaving the rest of us to scramble and pick up her slack. Office party or team building event she didn't want to attend. Sudden onset of stomach flu. Busy season when we all had to work weekends. Sarah's chronic fatigue syndrome would conveniently reach crisis levels. But here's the thing. Sarah wasn't just getting time off. She was getting attention, sympathy, and special treatment. Janet would constantly check on her, asking how she was feeling, if she needed anything. Colleagues would offer to help with her workload, bring her tea, dim the lights near her desk. She positioned herself as this brave warrior battling through chronic illness for the good of the team, and everyone bought it. Meanwhile, the rest of us were drowning. When Sarah called out sick, which was at least once a week, her work didn't disappear. It got redistributed among the team. I found myself staying late constantly, working weekends, and watching my own mental health suffer, while Sarah got praised for her dedication during her difficult health journey. The breaking point came during our biggest client pitch of the year. We were competing for a multi-million-dollar account, and everyone had to be all hands on deck for 3 weeks straight. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday, and we'd been working 14-hour days to prepare. That Wednesday, Sarah started her usual routine. She came in pale and shaky, mentioned she'd been having episodes with her heart condition. This was a new one, and spent the morning dramatically checking her pulse and fanning herself. By lunch, she was in Janet's office explaining that her doctor had advised her to take the rest of the week off to avoid a cardiac event. I watched Janet nod sympathetically and approved the sick leave while the rest of us stared in disbelief. This was our biggest opportunity of the year, and Sarah was bailing at the most critical moment. But Janet was so worried about liability and Sarah's health that she didn't even question it. That's when I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to expose Sarah directly. That would be too obvious and could backfire. Instead, I was going to create a situation where her own behavior would expose her. I knew Sarah was active on social media, particularly Instagram, where she posted constantly. Even during her sick days, she'd post stories, usually carefully curated to show her resting at home, maybe a photo of tea and tissues, or a sad selfie with a caption about fighting through another rough day. But I'd noticed something interesting in the background of some of her posts and in her tag locations. See, Sarah lived in a trendy neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown, and she frequently posted from local cafes, boutiques, and fitness studios. Even on days when she called out sick, I'd sometimes see her post from these locations. She'd be clever about it, never posting in real time, and always with captions that could plausibly be from a previous day. But the metadata doesn't lie, and neither do the little details in the background of photos. So I started documenting. Not stalking, not screenshotting, just paying attention. When Sarah called out with her heart condition that Wednesday, I noticed she posted an Instagram story at 2 p.m. from her favorite yoga studio. The story showed her mat and water bottle, with the caption, "Self-Care Sunday Vibes," clearly meant to look like it was from the previous weekend. But the class schedule board was visible in the background, showing Wednesday's classes. By Thursday, I had a plan. Sarah had called out again, claiming she needed to see a cardiologist immediately. But her Instagram story showed her at a trendy brunch spot downtown, just 6 blocks from our office. The post was crafted to look like a throwback to healthier days, but the restaurant's daily specials board in the background clearly showed Thursday's offerings. Now came the tricky part. I needed someone else to notice this contradiction in a way that seemed completely natural and innocent. Enter Marcus, our social media coordinator. Marcus was a sweet guy, maybe 25, and absolutely obsessed with Instagram. He followed everyone from the office and was always commenting on posts, sharing stories, and generally being the social butterfly of our group. He was also completely naive and had a tendency to speak before thinking, which made him perfect for what I needed. That Thursday afternoon, while we were all stressed and overworked covering for Sarah's absence, I was working on my laptop next to Marcus. I made sure to have Instagram open on my phone, with Sarah's story visible, the one from the brunch place with Thursday's specials clearly shown in the background. "Oh, man," I said, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. "I'm so jealous of people who can afford to eat at Brunch and Company. Look at this spread." I angled my phone slightly so he could see Sarah's story. Marcus, predictable as always, leaned over to look. "Oh, wow, that does look amazing. Wait." He squinted at the screen. "Is that Sarah's story?" "Dude, those are today's specials. I was just there yesterday and they had completely different ones. Wednesday, they had that amazing lobster Benedict that's not on the board anymore." I played dumb. "What do you mean?" "Look at the board behind her table," Marcus said, pointing excitedly. "That's definitely today's menu. See the Thursday special written right there? But wait." His face scrunched up in confusion. "Isn't Sarah out sick today? She had that heart thing." "Yeah." I said carefully she had to see a cardiologist. Maybe this is an old photo she's just posting now. Marcus pulled out his own phone and started scrolling through Sarah's Instagram. "But look, she posted this story like 2 hours ago, and she usually posts things right when she takes them. And look at this one from yesterday." He showed me another post from Wednesday, showing Sarah at the yoga studio. She called out sick Tuesday and Wednesday, but this is clearly from Wednesday afternoon. You can see the date on the class schedule in the mirror. I watched as the pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind. His expression shifted from confusion to realization to something approaching anger. "Dude," he said, his voice rising slightly, "I think Sarah's been faking being sick." "What?" "No way," I said, though I made sure my tone suggested I was starting to have doubts too. Marcus was already spiraling down the rabbit hole, scrolling through weeks of Sarah's posts with new eyes. "Look at this one from last month when she had that migraine episode. She's at SoulCycle. And this one from when she had food poisoning. She's clearly at a wine tasting event. Oh my God, and this one." He was getting more agitated by the second. "Marcus," I said quietly, "you should probably keep this to yourself for now. I mean, we don't know the whole story." But it was too late. Marcus was the office gossip, and there was no way he was keeping this revelation to himself. Within an hour, he discreetly shared his discovery with at least 3 other colleagues. By the end of the day, Thursday, half the office was quietly looking at Sarah's Instagram with new perspective. The real magic happened Friday morning. Sarah, apparently feeling that her mysterious heart condition had been miraculously cured overnight, decided to come back to work for our big client presentation. She walked in looking perfectly healthy, apologizing profusely for missing the crucial prep days, and explaining how grateful she was that the cardiologist had cleared her just in time. But the atmosphere in the office was different. People weren't rushing to ask how she was feeling or offering to help. There were sideways glances and whispered conversations. Sarah seemed to sense something was off, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The presentation went well, thankfully. We landed the client, and there was a general mood of celebration afterward. Janet announced that she was taking everyone out for drinks to celebrate. This is where Sarah made her fatal mistake. At the bar, with a few drinks in her and the adrenaline of successfully securing the client, Sarah started telling stories. She was laughing and animated, completely healthy and energetic, a stark contrast to the fragile, chronically ill persona she'd been maintaining. "Oh my God, you guys," she said, giggling over a cocktail. "I have to tell you about the funniest thing that happened yesterday. So I'm at this yoga class, right? And the instructor is trying to get everyone into this impossible pose." The table went quiet. Marcus, who had been waiting for exactly this kind of moment, pounced. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. "Weren't you at the cardiologist yesterday? For your heart condition?" Sarah's face went completely white. You could practically see her brain scrambling to backtrack. "Oh, no, this was before the appointment. Early in the morning," she stammered. But Marcus wasn't done. "Because I saw your Instagram story from brunch and yesterday afternoon. You know, the one where you could see Thursday specials in the background? That was after your doctor's appointment." The entire table was staring at Sarah now. Janet looked confused and concerned. Other colleagues were starting to piece together their own observations. "And actually," said Lisa from accounting, who had apparently been harboring her own suspicions, "didn't you say you were bedridden with migraines last Tuesday? Because I saw you at the farmer's market that afternoon. You were in line right in front of me at the coffee stand. And the weekend you had food poisoning," added Tom from Creative. "You tagged yourself at that wine festival downtown. I remember because I was thinking about going but decided against it. It was like watching a house of cards collapse." Once people started speaking up, the stories came flooding out. Colleagues shared their own observations, their own moments of doubt that they'd previously dismissed. Sarah's carefully constructed narrative crumbled in real time. Janet, meanwhile, was looking increasingly horrified as she realized the extent of what had been happening. This wasn't just an employee calling out sick more than usual. This was systematic deception that had been affecting the entire team's workload and morale. Sarah tried to salvage the situation. She claimed she'd been embarrassed about her mental health struggles and had been using physical symptoms as cover. She insisted that she really was struggling, just not in the way she described. But the evidence was overwhelming, and more importantly, the trust was completely broken. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Janet launched a formal investigation the following Monday, reviewing Sarah's attendance records, medical documentation, and comparing it with her social media activity. HR got involved, and they discovered that several of Sarah's doctor's notes had inconsistencies, different letterheads for what should have been the same practice, formatting that didn't match legitimate medical offices, even some that had been obviously doctored. Sarah was fired within the week, not just for the fall sick days, but for fraud related to the fake medical documentation and workers' compensation claims. The company also pursued legal action to recover the wages she'd been paid for fraudulent sick leave. But here's the thing that really got to me. It wasn't just about the money or the time off. It was about how Sarah had manipulated everyone's empathy and compassion. She'd made people feel guilty for questioning her, had positioned herself as a victim who needed protection and support, all while actively making her colleagues' lives harder. The team dynamic changed completely after Sarah left. Morale improved dramatically. Workload distribution became more equitable, and people seemed generally happier and less stressed. We realized how much Sarah's constant drama and crisis management had been affecting everyone. Janet also instituted new policies around sick leave documentation and social media awareness, not in a creepy Big Brother way, but just making people aware that public social media posts can contradict claims of illness and that the company takes fraudulent sick leave seriously. The irony is that if Sarah had just been honest about needing mental health days or work-life balance, most of that could have been accommodated. Our company actually had pretty generous policies around personal time and mental health resources. But instead, she chose to create this elaborate deception that ultimately destroyed her career and professional reputation. I heard through the grapevine that she had trouble finding new employment because when potential employers called for references, they got the full story. Word travels fast in our industry, especially about someone who committed fraud against their previous employer. As for Marcus, he became something of a hero around the office. He had no idea that I'd nudged him toward the discovery. He genuinely thought he'd stumbled onto the truth all by himself. And, in a way, he had. All I did was make sure he was looking at the right information at the right time. The rest was Sarah's own doing. The whole experience taught me a lot about workplace dynamics and the importance of documentation. It also showed me how effective it can be to let someone expose themselves rather than trying to expose them directly. If I had gone to Janet with screenshots and accusations, it could have looked like a personal vendetta or office drama. But when Sarah's own behavior and multiple colleagues' observations painted the same picture, the truth was undeniable. Looking back, I don't feel guilty about what I did. Sarah was stealing time, money, and energy from everyone around her. She was manipulating people's kindness and making everyone else's job harder. Someone needed to stop it. And sometimes justice needs a little nudge in the right direction. The best part is that Sarah never knew I had anything to do with her downfall. From her perspective, it was just bad luck that Marcus happened to notice her Instagram posts and piece things together. She couldn't even be angry at anyone specific. Just the unfortunate coincidence of her own carelessness finally catching up with her. These days, I'm at a different company, and I've never encountered anything quite like the Sarah situation again. But I'm definitely more aware of patterns of behavior that seem manipulative or dishonest. And I've learned that sometimes the best way to deal with a chronic liar is to give them enough rope to hang themselves. They'll usually do the job for you. The whole thing was a masterclass in how small actions can have enormous consequences, and how the truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. Sarah thought she was so clever, so careful about covering her tracks. But in the end, her own need for social media validation and attention became the very thing that destroyed her carefully constructed facade. I guess the lesson is that if you're going to lie systematically to your employer and colleagues, maybe don't document your real activities on public social media platforms. Just a thought. Update 6 months later. Holy crap, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the awards and comments. A lot of people have been asking for an update, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd have anything interesting to report. But oh boy, do I have news. So remember how I mentioned that Sarah had trouble finding work after getting fired? Well, apparently she didn't learn her lesson. At all. About 3 months ago, I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Jennifer who worked at a small PR firm across town. She said she got my contact info from a mutual connection and wanted to ask me some off-the-record questions about a former colleague. When she mentioned Sarah's full name, I knew exactly what this was about. We met for coffee, and Jennifer told me the most incredible story. Sarah had been hired at their company about 2 months after getting fired from ours. She'd apparently given them some sob story about being let go due to disability discrimination and how her previous employer didn't accommodate her chronic health conditions. But here's the kicker. Sarah was pulling the exact same scam at the new place. Same rotating cast of mysterious illnesses, same dramatic presentations of symptoms, same convenient timing with project deadlines. Jennifer said that within her first month, Sarah had called out sick 8 times and had filed 3 separate accommodation requests for different conditions. But Jennifer and her team were younger and more social media savvy than our group had been. They'd started following Sarah on Instagram immediately after she was hired. Apparently, it's just standard practice for their generation. And they caught on to the discrepancies way faster than we did. The breaking point came when Sarah called out with a severe migraine on the same day she was supposed to present to a major client. 3 hours later, she posted Instagram stories from a music festival, dancing and clearly having the time of her life, not even trying to hide it or make it look like old content, just straight up posting in real time while she was supposed to be bedridden with a migraine. Jennifer screenshotted everything and took it straight to HR. They fired Sarah on the spot, and here's the best part. They also reported her to the State Labor Board for fraudulent disability claims, since she'd been collecting accommodations pay. But wait, it gets better. Jennifer told me that after Sarah was fired, she went full scorched earth on social media. She posted these long, rambling rants about ageism and disability discrimination in the workplace, naming both companies and making all sorts of wild accusations. She claimed we were all part of some conspiracy to destroy disabled workers, and that her social media posts were being taken out of context. Here's where it gets really interesting. Apparently, Sarah's post caught the attention of some disability rights advocates who initially wanted to support her case. But when they started digging into the details and looking at the evidence, they realized what was actually going on. A few of them even published blog posts about how people who fake disabilities harm the cause of legitimate disability rights. The whole thing backfired spectacularly. Instead of generating sympathy, Sarah's social media meltdown just created more documentation of her dishonesty and vindictive behavior. Multiple people forwarded her posts to potential employers, and her reputation in our industry is now completely toxic. Jennifer also told me something that made my blood run cold. Apparently, during Sarah's brief time at the PR firm, she tried to get information about some of their employees' personal lives and social media accounts. Jennifer suspects Sarah was planning to pull some kind of revenge scheme, possibly try and get people fired by manufacturing evidence of misconduct. Thank God they caught on to her before she could do any real damage. But here's the absolute wildest part of this update. Remember Marcus, the social media guy who originally discovered Sarah's deception? Well, he left our company about 4 months ago to start his own social media consulting business. Last week, he called me laughing his ass off. Apparently, Sarah had reached out to him on LinkedIn, not realizing he was the one who'd exposed her. She wanted to hire his services to rebuild her professional brand and combat false narratives about her work history. She offered to pay him $5,000 to create a social media strategy that would make her look like a victim of workplace discrimination. Marcus, being the chaotic good person that he is, played along just long enough to get her to admit in writing that she wanted help fabricating a false narrative. Then he forwarded the entire conversation to Jennifer's HR department. Since Sarah was apparently still pursuing some kind of wrongful termination claim against the PR firm. The legal ramifications are still playing out, but from what Jennifer told me, Sarah's case went from weak to completely hopeless once they had evidence of her trying to manipulate social media to support false claims. As for me, this whole saga has actually had some unexpected positive outcomes. The story of how we handled the Sarah situation, minus my behind-the-scenes involvement, obviously, has become something of a case study at my current company. I've been asked to consult on a couple of similar situations, and it's led some interesting opportunities in HR consulting. I've also become much more aware of how social media can be used both to deceive and to uncover deception. It's made me more careful about my own online presence, but also more skilled at spotting inconsistencies in others' posts when something seems off. The whole experience has been like watching a masterclass in how not to handle getting caught in a lie. Instead of taking responsibility, learning from her mistakes, and try to rebuild her reputation honestly, Sarah doubled down on the deception and made everything exponentially worse for herself. I almost feel bad for her at this point. Almost. But then I remember all the late nights and weekend work her fake illnesses cost the rest of us, all the genuine empathy and concern she manipulated out of people, and all the real opportunities she stole from colleagues who were actually working hard. Some people in the comments on my original post said I was being too harsh, or that everyone deserves a second chance. And maybe that's true in general. But Sarah had dozens of chances to come clean, to change her behavior, or to find a more honest way to get the time off and attention she apparently needed. Instead, she chose to double down on the lies every single time, even when it meant screwing over new colleagues who had nothing to do with her previous situation. I guess the real lesson here is that the internet never forgets, and social media makes it almost impossible to completely reinvent yourself if you've been publicly dishonest. Sarah's story is now permanently searchable and linked to her name, and her own actions created most of that documentation. Anyway, that's the update. I'll try to keep you posted if there are any more developments. But honestly, I'm hoping this is the end of the Sarah saga. I've got my own career to focus on, and I'm trying not to spend too much mental energy on someone who's clearly determined to be her own worst enemy.